And we're back, and I'm back. Thankfully for you, this is the last time that you're going to have to deal with me today. My name is Brian Heater. I am the managing editor at A3, and I'm really happy. I'm really excited to finally meet you in person. Mikell Taylor, you are the Chief Autonomous Robotics Technologist
Yes.
at GM.
Yes, I am newly. I've only been there 5 weeks, so it's an exciting new job and exciting new space.
Are you still in the onboarding process?
A little bit. I'm starting to transition off. I think I kind of know enough to be dangerous at this point.
Okay.
But there's a lot to take in, right? Automotive manufacturing is a new space for me, even though I've been in robotics my whole career. So still learning a lot about the new vertical I'm in, but also starting to feel a little bit useful, which is a nice feeling.
Is it a role that existed prior to you?
No. I'm part of a new internal team that's looking at what we can do with some more advanced automation technology.
Okay.
And trying to, everybody's trying to kind of mature their manufacturing logistics into the warehouse of the future, factory of the future. So GM, obviously trying to be on the cutting edge of that and interesting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, as I told you, I just spent the last 15 minutes talking about tariffs, which we obviously don't have to go into, but that's going to have a tremendous impact on reshoring and things like that.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing is really an interesting moment for the robotics industry, right? It's even if tomorrow we could snap our fingers and bring this manufacturing all back to the US right now, there just aren't the people for it.
Yeah.
And so I think that robotics are going to play such a role in it, whether we do it gradually, whether we have reason to do it quickly across the industry. And we're going to be held to a probably much higher standard for readiness and technological maturity than I think the robotics industry has typically been ready for, which is probably good for us.
Yeah. So you're on the manufacturing side of GM versus the car side
That's
of
right.
GM. All
That's
right.
right.
And is there any sort of cross-pollination between the two?
A little bit. I actually know some of the folks on the crew side from my past life at Amazon. Okay. I worked with a few of them when they were at Amazon. And so, we've kind of been reaching out. We've hired a few people off that team into our new organization. So, to the extent that those technologies have some overlap, we want to share those lessons learned. There's no reason for everybody to have to relearn them.
What's Ty Brady like when he's not being interviewed by a reporter?
Oh, he's exactly the same. Okay. He's the biggest cheerleader I've ever met.
Yeah. So you come to a show like this, obviously, again, like we're in Detroit, this is manufacturing. What do you do with yourself this week?
A lot of what I'm doing is twofold, right? There's some stuff that's directly related to my new job, right? Especially because in the space I'm in now, for example, we do a lot of work with plant simulation with Siemens, and that's not something that I have had to do before in the other types of robotics I've worked on. So trying to talk to some of those companies and really understand what they're offering from a technology standpoint that supports automation, and just learn the lay of the land a little bit. So there's a little bit of that happening. For me, as a roboticist, a lot of it is just seeing what is out there, right? Does anybody know something I don't know? And what can I learn about that? I think that here there is obviously a lot of discussion about AI and the role that it plays in robotics. I think it's a little bit more grounded here than some other places it gets discussed, because at the end of the day, this is industrial technology, right? And we don't have time for hype, and we don't have time for 80% good enough.
That's really funny. Yeah, I moderated a panel with, and it was specifically on AI and industrial automation. I had one person before tell me, I don't want to talk about generative AI. Well, yeah, I mean, I get everybody's talking about agentic AI, and that makes a lot of sense. But do you think that there will be a role both in manufacturing and, I guess, specifically what you do and what your team does for LLMs and GenAI?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any technology that has been called AI over the last several decades, right? There's always something new that gets called AI. Everything else becomes a classical method. So like all these other iterations we've had of AI, there are going to be some things that really does change and unlock that we previously could not do. I don't think it's an overnight change. It's not a magical robot brain, right? And so I think that the challenge for any organization looking to implement it, especially around embodied AI or robotics, is to figure out the niches where it really makes sense, where it really is going to be a game changer rather than like a 1 or 2% incremental improvement.
Yeah, I mean, an incredible thing, and again, this is really reflected in this show, and I guess just A3 generally being located in Detroit, is it's unfathomable how far ahead automotive was when it came to introducing robotics. I mean, we're talking back to like the 60s or something like that. There's a long history there.
There is, yeah. And I love going to the plants. It's robotic arms, right? It's not the mobile robots I've been working on for a long time. But my God, you stand next to these things and they're 20 feet tall. It's like standing next to a dinosaur. It's just this incredibly impressive machinery and automation that they did figure out how to leverage at an incredibly high level of reliability very early on. And so while we look at all these advanced robotics technologies now, they're cool. But the standard has been set on expectations for precision and quality and reliability and uptime. And that's what you're competing against now, not the lack of automation, but what has come before and how much we come to rely on that in the industry.
Do you think manufacturing, and I guess in particular automotive manufacturing, will continue to be, for the foreseeable future, the largest purchaser and user of this kind of automation?
I don't know. I think they're going to still play a major role. I think especially as a lot more kind of electric vehicle manufacturing is coming online, it's giving a lot of these companies the opportunity to bring in some new automation technology that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if the automotive industry continues to be at the forefront of this. I think they want to be, right? I would like them to be. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah.
But compared to kind of up and coming things like logistics and other types of manufacturing where there's no automation there yet in many places, I think that kind of greenfield opportunity is going to attract a lot of attention from robotics companies. And, it'll be a little bit of a race to see who can implement the new stuff the fastest.
I was actually entirely unrelated to this conversation, having a conversation with somebody earlier today about Proteus.
Oh, really?
And you were involved in the creation of that. Yeah. He said, like most of them are caged. I'm like, I know, I've been to there. And he's like, they wear this like safety vest. And I was like, I know, I broke that story, but Proteus was a really big step forward for Amazon.
It was a real mental departure for Amazon Robotics to be operating that way. And one of the really interesting design problems that we had too was that was also a huge change for the people working in the fulfillment centers, right? They've been taught, stay away from the robots. They need to be behind a fence unless you've got that special vest on. They could be dangerous.
It was like going to a batting cage almost.
Yeah. And you really have to pay attention. Whereas Proteus, people can operate around it and basically not have to pay attention to it. But that's a real hard thing for the people who've been trained otherwise to resolve. So there was a real user experience design thing on top of the actual autonomous mobility technology to really make it something that could operate effectively around people who would be comfortable with it, which was kind of, you had to do that first before you could really worry about, does the robot actually work?
Yeah, I think an under discussed element of this, I was talking about humanoids on a panel earlier this week, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but is the just kind of instincts that are built into it. Like I was talking to Melanie Weiss, right? She's really big on safety around robots. And she said, well, one of the downsides of making a humanoid is you see something anthropomorphic and you automatically want to protect it. And as it's collapsing, you
want to stop it, right?
And then it falls on you. But AMRs, are those going to continue to be your focus for now?
Yeah, I'm part of it. Yeah, I mean, I think as GM, sort of on the user side of the technology, right? And as a roboticist, I care that we're always using the right robot for the job. Sure. Right. So if AMRs are the right answer, then that's going to be part of my purview. But I think that a lot of it too is being able to assess the right automation technology. There's a roboticist in the Boston area named Joe Jones. He was one of the chief engineers on the original Roomba at iRobot. And he has this rule of robotics, which is whenever you want to build a robot, the first thing you should do is figure out how to avoid needing to build a robot. Okay. And I really like that rule because I love robots and I have for years, but they're not always the right answer. Yeah. And so I care a lot that we're using robots in the right way and the right robots in the right way rather than robots for the sake of robots. Yeah. My understanding, I've been to some of the Amazon facilities in Boston for some of those events, but there's essentially, pretty far outside of Boston, there's essentially these
what is basically a fulfillment center where a lot of this robotics testing happens. Can you talk a little bit about the process of bringing, in particular, an automated or an autonomous system that has to work in around people and then graduating that to an actual like real world setting?
Yeah. So, I mean, we obviously did a lot of lab testing first, and that was as much the does it work as how is it around people. And, you have QA engineers who are spending all day, every day with these things. And boy, you get a lot of initial feedback over, wow, that sound is really annoying. Wow, this thing it does is really dumb. I mean, that's your really valuable first pass feedback on this, in addition to the functionality. So we did a bunch of with that. But we knew that there were certain things we were simply going to have to learn in the field, right? Yeah. This was such a new way of operating robots for Amazon. No one knows the right answer. This is still new technology in the industry. No one knows the right answer on the right way to do a lot of things. So we got into a real fulfillment center early. And we were there for almost 2 years, I think, before we said, hooray, we have launched in this fulfillment center, because it was very incremental, followed by engineers. We had a lot of extra safety controls in place. We were being careful about the interaction between the robots and the people to make sure people were going to be as safe as possible until we could guarantee their safety. So very, very incremental, kind of building up to finally taking our hands off, being able to step back and just watching to see what would happen. So it was a bit slow and steady. I think it made the Amazon products much better and got a little bit more buy-in from the folks working in the warehouses. But it does take time, I think, to really do it right.
Humanoids, yay or nay?
I will preface this saying, if anyone's going to convince me humanoids are a yes, it's going to be Melanie Wise.
Okay.
But mostly, I think no. I think the
fact that she came from AMRs is like
that,
pretty
yeah,
consistent, right?
and she knows her stuff, and she also has such a good view on safety, that I know that the humanoids that she's working on are held to a very high standard on safety, whereas that's not always true from a lot of the companies that are kind of speed running the development.
So safety is kind of one of the primary concerns for you?
It is, yeah. I mean, they're dynamically stable, right? And so you lose power, it falls over. I took my 7-year-old to a robotics trade show a couple of weeks ago in Boston, and we were walking past some humanoids, and I had my hand out not to catch the humanoid, but to protect my son.
Yeah.
Because if that thing had fallen over, he's a little guy, I could crush him. So I think about that stuff a lot, especially in industrial environments where safety is such a priority. I think, the bipedal form factor, right? That's a lot of cost and complexity for 2 legs, right? Can you get a torso on a wheeled base? Can you do 80% of the humanoid applications with that?
Yes.
At what point do you really need 2 legs?
Yes.
So, that's the thing where I'm sure the applications are out there. They're probably not the industrial environment as much because those are designed for wheels, right? Forklifts, carts, trolleys, all that kind of thing. I think there's probably more applications outside of the industrial environment than inside, but I'm sure there are some in the industrial environment. It's just a question of narrowing that down to where humanoids really are the right answer, versus one of many possible answers.
Yeah, let's expand our definition of what constitutes a human.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, people are, right now, my understanding is people are like, okay, torso up if it kind of looks like a person, has 2 arms, and then it's...
I mean, they're all mobile manipulators, right? It's a question of the locomotion. So
yeah, it's really the bottom half.
Yeah. Now, do I think that there are applications for bimanual mobile manipulators of any locomotion? Absolutely. It's just, do you when is the cost and complexity of bipedal locomotion really worth it?
Yeah, I think part of the problem, well, I know part of the problem, again, because I was at TechCrunch for 9 years, is hype cycle. It's all the money is going into this particular thing. And so much of that excitement and investment was around legs early on. So everybody kind of went straight to legs. And I tell me if you're seeing the same thing, but it feels like we're kind of, all right, going a little bit back to that place where it's like, yeah, again, as you said, I would say probably at least 80% of these floor operations can be executed by a wheel-based robot.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I think about humanoids is that most humanoid, the early humanoid robot companies grew out of research on legs and joints and locomotion, right? Boston Dynamics, agility, right? The question was, how can I make robotic joints that are similar to those found in nature? That is good and useful and valuable research. Like, that is the right stuff to do. But the focus is on locomotion. And that movement is not the valuable part of robotics, right? Moving from point A to point B, like, yeah, that's part of it, but the valuable stuff is manipulation. It's what do you do after you have moved from point A to point B? Then what?
Yeah.
Do you have to set something down, pick something up, whatever? And a lot of these newer humanoid companies are speed running all of the development of something that walks and kind of forgetting the part that it needs to be something that does something, right? And I think that the manipulation research has really lagged the development of cool bipedal form factors. And you get companies like, oh, we'll put it in your home, it'll just teleoperate. I don't want someone teleoperating something in my home. That's a terrible idea, right? So I think that really the humanoid industry kind of really needs to be looking more at the value add manipulation work. And that's a problem that's true whether you're a wheeled mobile manipulator, you're a legged mobile manipulator, whatever. Those are the problems we need to solve before these will be useful. The locomotion component of it is, something we figure out afterward, I think.
So we have less than a minute left. So I wanted to get around to this. I'm going to ask you, how did you get involved with FIRST?
When I was 16 years old, a bunch of engineering students from Ohio State University came to my high school and said, hey, we want to start this team. And my science teacher said, hey, Michael, you've got a study hall period when they're here. Why don't you come to the meeting? And then it changed my life.
It was just a straight shot from there, basically?
Pretty much. Fell in love with robots right away.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.